In the vast and intricate tapestry of life, there exist organisms so small they are invisible to the naked eye. These are the bacteria, the viruses, the fungi. For millennia, they have shaped our world, sometimes as partners in the great dance of existence, and at other times as harbingers of disease. Biological weapons, in their simplest form, are the deliberate use of these tiny life forms, or the toxins they produce, not as natural occurrences, but as instruments of harm. They are living weapons, designed to infect and incapacitate, turning the very processes of life against itself. It is a profoundly unnatural act, twisting the building blocks of nature into agents of fear and conflict, on a scale that can be truly terrifying. Imagine a weapon that does not explode with a loud bang or leave behind twisted metal. Instead, it spreads silently, moving from person to person, carried on the air we breathe, or in the water we drink. This is the nature of a biological weapon. The intent is to cause widespread illness, panic, and disruption. Unlike a conventional bomb, which has a clear and immediate impact zone, a biological agent can travel far beyond its initial point of release. It multiplies, it evolves, and it can linger in the environment for days, weeks, or even years. This makes it a particularly insidious and unpredictable form of warfare, one that blurs the line between the battlefield and civilian life, threatening entire populations with a slow, creeping dread. The agents chosen for such purposes are often selected for their specific dreadful qualities. Some are chosen for their ability to spread rapidly through a population, like the virus that causes smallpox. Others might be selected for their sheer lethality, such as the bacterium that causes anthrax, which can be fatal if inhaled. The toxins produced by certain organisms, like botulinum toxin from the bacterium Clostridium botulinum, are among the most poisonous substances known to humanity. The goal is not just to cause harm, but to do so in a way that overwhelms medical systems and shatters the morale of a society. It is a weapon that attacks the very fabric of public health and social order. Understanding these weapons requires us to look at the world through a different lens. We must see the unseen. It is a world not of steel and explosives, but of microbes and cells. The threat is not a missile streaking across the sky, but a single microscopic spore floating on a gentle breeze. This invisible nature makes them incredibly difficult to detect before they have begun their devastating work. By the time the first symptoms appear in a population, the agent may have already spread far and wide. It is this silent, patient, and pervasive quality that makes biological weapons one of the most profound and unsettling challenges to global security and human well-being. The idea of using disease as a weapon is not a modern invention. It is a dark thread that runs deep into our shared history, long before humanity understood the existence of germs. Ancient armies knew that a contaminated water source could weaken an enemy more effectively than a frontal assault. There are accounts from as far back as the 6th century BCE of Assyrian forces poisoning enemy wells with rye ergot, a fungus that causes convulsions and hallucinations. Roman writers described tactics of throwing diseased animal carcasses into enemy camps, or over the walls of besieged cities. The goal was simple: to introduce sickness and despair, to break the will of the opponent from within, using the foulest tools available. This crude form of biological warfare continued through the Middle Ages. One of the most infamous examples occurred in 1346, during the Mongol siege of the Crimean city of Kaffa. The attacking Mongol army was itself ravaged by the Black Death, the bubonic plague. In a desperate and horrifying act, they used their catapults to hurl the infected corpses of their own dead soldiers over the city walls. It is believed that fleeing merchants from Kaffa may have then carried the plague into Europe, contributing to one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. This event stands as a chilling testament to how disease, when weaponized, can have consequences that ripple across continents and through centuries. The scientific revolution brought a new, more precise understanding of this terrible art. As scientists like Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch began to identify the specific microbes responsible for diseases, military strategists began to see new and dreadful possibilities. During the First World War, there were allegations and documented attempts by several nations to infect enemy livestock with anthrax and glanders, aiming to disrupt supply lines and cripple cavalry forces. Though their impact on the war was limited, these efforts marked a disturbing shift from using disease material in a general sense to the calculated deployment of specific, cultivated pathogens as instruments of war. This grim progression reached a new level of sophistication in the 20th century. several nations established large-scale, state-sponsored biological weapons programs. The most notorious of these was Unit 731 of the Imperial Japanese Army during the Second World War. This unit conducted horrific experiments on human prisoners, deliberately infecting them with pathogens like plague, cholera, and anthrax to study their effects. They also deployed these agents against Chinese cities, dropping plague-infested fleas from aircraft, causing deadly outbreaks. These events represent a dark pinnacle in the history of germ warfare, where scientific knowledge was systematically perverted to inflict maximum human suffering. Biological weapons are fundamentally different from conventional arms like guns and bombs, primarily because they are alive. A bullet or a bomb delivers its destructive energy in a single finite moment. Its impact is immediate, loud, and geographically contained. A biological weapon, however, is a silent killer that works on a completely different timescale. After its release, there is an incubation period, a quiet delay during which the pathogen replicates within its new hosts. During this time, there is no sign that an attack has even occurred. The weapon is not the initial device, but the self-propagating epidemic that follows, making it a threat that grows over time rather than diminishing. Furthermore, the target of a biological weapon is not a structure or a vehicle, but life itself. It exploits the very biology of its victims. Conventional weapons destroy through brute force, shattering stone and tearing flesh. Biological weapons subvert an organism's internal processes, turning its own cells into factories for the agent of its demise. This makes them uniquely indiscriminate. A virus cannot distinguish between a soldier and a child, a military base and a hospital. Once released into a population, it follows the pathways of human contact. A handshake, a cough, a shared meal, making everyone a potential victim and a potential carrier. Chunk for each media group. Close-up of handshake between two people at stock at distribute_equally. A handshake, a cough, a shared meal. This inherent lack of control is one of its most terrifying characteristics. Another critical difference lies in detection and defense. A missile can be tracked by radar, and an army can be seen by satellites. A biological attack might not be identified until hospitals begin to see a sudden, inexplicable surge in patients with similar unusual symptoms. By then, the window for an effective response may be closing rapidly. Defending against such a threat requires a completely different infrastructure, not walls and anti-aircraft guns, but public health surveillance, rapid diagnostic tools, and stockpiles of vaccines and antibiotics. Chunk for each. Media group, public health surveillance control room with screens, scientists monitoring outbreak maps at distribute_equally. Public health surveillance rapid diagnostic tools, stockpiles of vaccines and antibiotics. The first responders are not soldiers but doctors, nurses, and epidemiologists, fighting an invisible war in clinics and laboratories. Chunk for each. Media group, doctors and nurses in protective gear treating patients in clinic at distribute_equally. Doctors, nurses, epidemiologists. Finally, the psychological impact of biological weapons is disproportionately large compared to their physical footprint. The fear of an unseen, silent, and deadly contagion can cause social breakdown far beyond the actual number of people infected. It can lead to mass panic, the collapse of economies, and a deep-seated distrust among people who may begin to see each other as potential sources of infection. Chunk for each. Media group, aerial view of chaotic crowd, people running in panic on city street at distribute_equally, mass panic, collapse of economies, deep-seated distrust among people. This power to terrorize, to shatter the bonds of community and create chaos, is a key strategic goal for anyone who would consider using such a weapon. It is a weapon that attacks not just bodies, but the very mind and soul of a society. In our modern, interconnected world, the threats posed by biological weapons have evolved. While the prospect of a state-level biological war has diminished, new dangers have emerged. One of the most serious is bioterrorism. The knowledge and technology required to produce dangerous pathogens are becoming more accessible. A small, determined group with sufficient expertise could potentially acquire a deadly agent and release it in a crowded urban center, such as a subway system or an international airport. The goal would be to cause not only death and disease but also to sow mass panic and cripple a nation's economy and social stability, making it a potent tool for non-state actors. Another significant concern stems from the risk of accidental releases from laboratories. Around the world, high containment laboratories handle the world's most dangerous pathogens for legitimate research purposes, such as developing vaccines and treatments. These facilities, known as Biosafety Level 4 labs, operate under the strictest safety protocols. However, the possibility of human error, equipment failure, or a natural disaster compromising containment, however small, can never be completely eliminated. An accidental release could trigger an outbreak just as devastating as a deliberate attack, highlighting the immense responsibility that comes with studying these microscopic forms of life. In response to these grave threats, the international community has made concerted efforts to outlaw these terrible weapons. The cornerstone of these efforts is the 1972 Biological Weapons Convention, a treaty that prohibits the development, production, stockpiling, and acquisition of biological agents for hostile purposes. Over 180 countries have joined this convention, sending a powerful global message that the use of disease as a weapon is unacceptable. Organizations like the World Health Organization also play a crucial role, managing global surveillance networks to rapidly detect and respond to unusual disease outbreaks, whether they are natural or deliberately caused. Ultimately, our greatest defense is knowledge and preparedness. By educating the public, policymakers, and healthcare professionals about the nature of these threats, we build a more resilient society. Understanding the signs of a potential biological event enables faster reporting and response. Investing in public health infrastructure, developing new medical countermeasures, and fostering international cooperation are all essential parts of a robust global defense. The invisible world of microbes holds immense power, both for good and for ill. By remaining vigilant and working together, we can strive to ensure that this power is never again unleashed as a weapon against humanity itself.